A reading from the book of Maccabees 2. Jason of Cyrene has recorded in 5 volumes the story of Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, the purification of the great temple, and the dedication of its altar. He has described the battles with Antiochus Epiphanes and with his son Eupator, and he has told of the heavenly visions that appeared to those who fought bravely and enthusiastically to defend Judaism. Our forces were few in number, but they plundered the entire country and routed the heathen forces. They recaptured the temple famous throughout the world, liberated Jerusalem, and restored the laws that were in danger of being abolished. They were able to do all these things because the Lord was merciful and kind to them. I will now try to summarize in a single book the 5 volumes written by Jason. The number of details and the bulk of material can be overwhelming for anyone who wants to read an account of the events, but I have attempted to simplify it for all the readers. Those who read for sheer pleasure will find enjoyment, and those who want to memorize the facts will not find it difficult. Writing such a summary is a difficult task, demanding hard work and sleepless nights. It is as difficult as preparing a banquet that people of different tastes will enjoy. But I am happy to undergo this hardship in order to please my readers. And I will leave the matter of details to the original author and attempt to give only a summary of the events. I am not the builder of a new house who is concerned with every detail of the structure, but simply a painter whose only concern is to make the house look attractive. The historian must master his subject, examine every detail, and then explain it carefully. But whoever is merely writing a summary could be permitted to give a brief account without going into a detailed discussion. So then, without any further comment, I will begin my story. It would be foolish to write such a long introduction that the story itself would have to be cut short. The argument between Onias and Simon. When Onias was high priest in Jerusalem, the holy city enjoyed peace and prosperity, and its laws were strictly obeyed, because he was devout and hated evil. The kings of Syria and Egypt honored the temple and presented it with expensive gifts. And King Seleucus, ruler of all of Asia, even used to pay the costs of the temple sacrifices from the revenues he collected. But a man by the name of Simon of the tribe Bilgah, the chief administrative official of the temple, lost an argument he had with Onias over the regulations governing the city market. At this time, Apollonius, son of Thracius, was the governor of Greater Syria. Simon went to him and said that there was so much money in the temple treasury that it could not be counted, and since the money was not needed for sacrifices, it might as well be placed under the king's control. Heliodorus is sent to Jerusalem. When Apollonius met with the king, he told him about the money, and the king ordered Heliodorus, his chief minister, to get it for him. Heliodorus set out at once on his mission, but he claimed that he was only making a tour of inspection of the cities of Greater Syria. After he had arrived in Jerusalem and had been warmly received by the high priest, he explained the real reason for his visit and asked if what he had been told was true. The high priest then stated that Simon, the devil of a man, had not been telling the truth. There was indeed some money in the temple treasury, but part of it was set aside for widows and orphans, and part of it belonged to Hyrcanus, son of Tobias, a very important man. He also pointed out that the total amount was only 30,000 pounds of silver and 15,000 pounds of gold. he added that it was absolutely impossible that anyone should be permitted to take the money of those people who had placed their trust in the sanctity and safety of this world-famous temple. Heliodorus plans to enter the temple. Heliodorus insisted that the money should be taken for the royal treasury, as the king had ordered. So he set a day and went into the temple to supervise the counting of the money. This caused an uproar throughout the entire city. Priests, wearing their priestly robes, threw themselves face downward before the altar and begged God to keep the money safe, since he had given the laws designed to protect the money that people deposited in the temple. It was heartbreaking to see the high priest. His face turned pale, revealing the agony of his soul, and his body was trembling with fear, reflecting the pain in his heart. People ran from their houses to join together in prayer that the temple might not be defiled. Women, wearing nothing but skirts of sackcloth, crowded the streets. Young girls whose parents had never allowed them to be seen in public ran to the gates or to the walls of the city or just stared out of their windows. But wherever they went, they lifted their hands to God in prayer. What a pitiful sight it was to see the high priest in such great agony and frustration, and to see everyone in the city confused, lying face down on the ground. The Lord protects his temple. While everyone was begging the Lord Almighty to protect the money that had been entrusted to his care, Heliodorus went on with his plan. But at the very moment that he and his bodyguards arrived at the treasury, the Lord of all supernatural powers caused such a vision to appear that everyone who had dared to enter with Heliodorus was panic-stricken and weak with fear at this display of the Lord's power. In the vision they saw a horse and rider. The horse had a richly decorated bridle, and its rider, dressed in gold armor, was frightening. Suddenly, the horse rushed at Heliodorus when it reared up and struck him with its hooves. Heliodorus saw two unusually strong and handsome young men wearing fine clothes. They stood on either side of him and beat him unmercifully. He immediately fell to the ground unconscious, and his men put him on a stretcher and carried him out. Only a moment earlier, this man had entered the treasury with a large group of men, including all his bodyguards, but now he was carried away helpless. So they all openly acknowledged the mighty power of God. Onias prays for Heliodorus' recovery. Heliodorus lay there, unable to speak and without hope of recovery from this demonstration of God's power. But the Jews praised Almighty God because he had miraculously protected his temple and had brought great happiness where only minutes before there had been fear and confusion. Some of Heliodorus' friends quickly asked Onias the high priest to pray that the Most High would spare the life of this man who was at the point of death. So the high priest offered a sacrifice in the hope that God would save Heliodorus, for he did not want the king to think that the Jews had done this to the man he had sent. While Onias was offering the sacrifice, the two young men wearing the same clothes as before again appeared to Heliodorus and said, "Be grateful to the high priest. The Lord has spared your life because of him. Remember that it was the Lord of heaven who punished you. Now go and tell everyone of his great power." When they had said this, they disappeared. Heliodorus praises God. So Heliodorus offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made many promises because the Lord had spared his life. Then he said goodbye to Onias and returned with his army to the king. There he told everyone what the Lord, the most powerful of all gods, had done. When the king asked Heliodorus who would be the best man to send on to the next mission to Jerusalem, Heliodorus replied, "If you have an enemy or know of someone plotting against your government, send him. He will come back badly beaten, if he comes back at all, for some strange power from God is at work there. The God of heaven watches over the temple. He strikes down and destroys anyone who comes to harm it." That is the story of how the temple treasury was protected from Heliodorus.